Today I'm breaking down the 10 critical elements that separate actual pro players from the thousands that will never make it. Pros are implementing all of these things and you're definitely not. And if you're not implementing them, you're literally sabotaging your own improvement. We're going to split this video into two parts. What you need to master inside Fortnite and then what you need to control outside of the game. Both are equally important, and ignoring either section will keep you stuck in that frustrating cycle of almost being good enough but not quite being there. Stop playing against bad players. Here's something that's going to sting, but you need to hear it. If you're spending most of your practice time in public matches or against players significantly worse than you, you're actively damaging your competitive development. Every fight against a bad player is teaching your brain to expect reactions that will never happen in a real tournament against real good players. If you double swing your PS against a bad player's wall and they just sit there and don't know how to counter it, this is then going to teach your brain that this was a successful strategy, even though it wouldn't work against anyone better. When you make an open edit against someone that's not ready for it, you're reinforcing a habit that will get you eliminated instantly against an actually good competitor. Basically, what I'm trying to say is bad players will let you get away with these sloppy positioning, sloppy mechanic, predictable edits, and any other mistakes you make. You can get away with that with a bad player, but any player better, you would get punished immediately. Think about it this way. If you're training for a marathon, you don't practice by jogging with people that can barely walk, if that makes sense. You train with actual runners who push you beyond your comfort zone, and the same principles apply for Fortnite. Every hour you spend dominating lobbies full of casual players is an hour you could have spent getting better against opponents that actually expose your weaknesses and let you see what you're actually doing wrong. The solution isn't just about playing more rank. Most players in the higher ranks aren't playing with the same intensity, strategy, and seriousness as you'll face in tournaments. You need to actively seek out scrims, zone wars with competitive players, and practice sessions against people who are also genuinely trying to improve at the highest level. Yes, you will lose more fights. Yes, your confidence might take a hit initially, but that temporary discomfort is the price of actual improvement. Real pros, as they were coming up, would spend most of their time just losing fights over and over and over. They understand that comfort is an enemy of growth, and every easy elimination they get is a missed opportunity to learn something new. Take fights slower and think before you move. This is a section that most aspiring pros just completely forget about mid-fight. They think speed equals skill, so they rush every engagement trying to prove how fast they can edit and build and how fast they can end the fight. But here's what they don't understand. Speed without any purpose is just chaos, and chaos does not win tournaments. You need to be systematic when you fight. When you take fights without thinking, you're not just trying to win that specific engagement, you're programming your brain with patterns that become automatic under pressure. If you practice making impulsive decisions in creative, you'll make impulsive decisions when money is on the line in a tournament. The best players in the world don't just react faster, they think faster. They process information, consider multiple options, and choose the optimal play within just milliseconds. But that processing speed only comes from deliberately practicing thinking process first, then gradually increasing the pace whilst maintaining that decision-making quality. Every fight should have intention behind it. Before you take that wall, ask yourself why you're taking it and what you're going to follow up with. Before you make that edit, try see if it's a good edit and what your opponent is doing. Before you push that wall, make sure you're boxed up and there's no other angle you can get hit from. This isn't about being slow or hesitant, it's about being deliberate. The players who skip this step out is just trying to speed run their way to the pro level, and they always hit the same wall. They develop fast hands but slow brains, and fast hands without smart decisions will never be slow hands but smart decisions. Take the time to build the right habits now, because bad habits that are done at high speed are literally just fast bad habits. Stop overcomplicating fights. Here's a reality check that's going to hurt some egos. All those fancy quad edits and complex build sequences you've been practicing, they're probably making you worse, not better. The best players in the world succeed because they master simple, effective strategies and execute them flawlessly under pressure. This was a huge problem for me personally, because being a fast editor, I get a bit carried away with my mechanic. But over time, I've managed to teach myself how to be simple in places where I needed to be simple, if that makes sense. Overcomplication is a disease that infects players players who watch too many highlight reels and not enough tournament gameplay. They see a pro hit an insane clip in creative and think that's what competitive Fortnite looks like and what you need to look like to be good at competitive Fortnite. But if you actually study tournament footage, you'll notice something interesting. The best players rarely use their most advanced mechanics in high stake situations or any fights at all. Why? Because complicated plays have more failure points. Every extra edit is an opportunity for a mistake. Every unnecessary build is another chance to be countered or have a missed input that will ruin your gameplay. And when there's money on the line and your heart is racing, your brain defaults to whatever you've practiced the most consistently, not whatever looks the coolest. The pros who consistently place well are masters at the fundamentals and execute them perfectly. They take walls cleanly, they make simple edits with perfect timing, they build efficiently without wasting mats, and they do really good peaks without doing some random quad edit. They understand that winning fights isn't about impressing everyone that's watching, it's about eliminating the opponent with the minimum risk and the maximum consistency. This does not mean you can't learn advanced mechanics, it just means you should have a clear hierarchy of what to use and when. Save the complex plays for situations where simple approaches won't work, or just save them for creative. Master the basics so thoroughly they become automatic, then add complexity only when it gives you a clear strategic advantage. Most players will do this backwards, and so did I. They learn the flashy stuff first and try to build fundamentals around it. That's like trying to learn how to do backflips before you can actually walk properly. It might look impressive, but it's not a foundation you can build a competitive career on. And that quite closely links to the next point, which is it's not about mechanics anymore. If you're still thinking that better mechanics is what separates you from a pro level, you're already behind. The mechanical skill gap that existed in the earlier seasons of Fortnite is largely disappeared. Go into any high level creative lobby and you'll find dozens of players who can edit and build just as fast as current pros, if not faster. What makes the real difference is the skills that most players will never actually even think about trying to improve. Game sense, positioning, communication, mental resilience, these are all things that people don't really try and practice as a lower skill player. Aim is still important, but it's not about hitting crazy flicks anymore. It's about being able to track your opponent well enough and being able to see where they are the whole time, to be able to counter every mistake they make and capitalize on every opportunity you get to win the fight. The players making money in tournaments aren't necessarily the ones with the fastest edits. They're the ones who can understand the whole lobby skill level, adjust their aggression accordingly. These are the ones that know when to take fights and when to avoid them, and they're also the ones that can perform their mechanics consistently under pressure, not just in creative but also where it really matters. This is why so many mechanically gifted players plateau at a certain level. They've mastered the easy part, but competitive Fortnite requires a completely different skill set that most players will never develop because it's not an immediately satisfying thing to learn, if that makes sense. If you want to go pro, you need to start thinking more like a chess player. Every decision should be part of a larger strategy. Every fight should serve a purpose beyond just getting an elimination. Every rotation should be calculated based on the information and probability, not just on your instincts or just randomly. Master mouse and keyboard control. This is the most overlooked aspect of Fortnite competitive improvement, and it's costing players more than they realize. Most players think mouse and keyboard control just means having good aim, but real control goes much deeper than that. It's about having such precise control over your inputs that your hands can never not do what your brain wants you to do. When your mouse control is truly mastered, your crosshair goes exactly where you intend it to every single time. Your muscle memory is so refined that you can make micro adjustments without consciously thinking about it. This level of control transforms everything else you do in the game to a whole nother level. Think about crosshair placement during edits. Most players edit, then move their crosshair to where they want to aim. Players with mastered mouse control position their crosshair optimally before they even make the edit, so they're ready to shoot the instant the edit completes. That split-second advantage actually makes a huge difference in hundreds of fights. Keyboard control is equally important, and this is probably one you haven't heard of as much because it's not really called keyboard control. It's just what I'm calling it for this video so you can understand it easily. It's not just about hitting the right keys quickly. You need muscle memory so precise that you don't even ever have to think about what key you're hitting ever. The best way to develop this control is just to play more. Aim trainers aren't just for aim. You can also use them for mouse control exercises too that will improve your precision and consistency. And with getting better at keyboard, just play more Fortnite and take it more slow so you can really get used to the things you got to press. This is especially important if you've just started on keyboard or you're just a new player in general. Most players will just skip this foundation and try to build advanced skills on top of inconsistent basics. It's like trying to become a surgeon when you can barely hold a scalpel steady. The mechanical ceiling you can reach is directly limited by how precisely you can control your inputs, and most players are operating at about 60% of their potential control level. A quick note, I've been seeing a lot of you talk about high ping, so in the description I'm going to leave a link to a software called GearUp Booster. GearUp Booster is amazing for reducing ping, and it also eliminates packet loss. So for aspiring, improving Fortnite players like you lot, you will need this in the future. Anyway, let's just jump into the outside of Fortnite section. So this is now moved over to section number 2, which is going to be outside of Fortnite, and starting off with having the wrong mindset. Here's where most aspiring pros completely derail their own improvement. They approach every improvement with the same casual mindset they use for everything else in life. They practice when they feel like it, they get discouraged by setbacks, and they treat going pro like some sort of lottery where talent and luck determines winners. But real pros, they understand that improvement follows their practice, that consistent effort produces measurable results, and that every obstacle is just a problem to be solved with the right approach. They don't just hope they'll get better, they engineer their improvement through deliberate processes. This systematic thinking starts with a goal. You need to set a few goals that actually make sense. Instead of vague aspirations like I want to go pro, you need to set specific, measurable targets with clear timelines. Pros break down complex skills into component parts and practice each element separately. They track their process objectively and adjust their methods based on data, not feelings. The mindset shift that changes everything is understanding that nothing is impossible as long as you're willing to work hard enough with the right approach. This isn't just motivational nonsense. It's actually a practical reality. Every current pro and ex-pro has been where you are right now. Every skill they have was developed through practice. Every strategy they know and use was learned through experience. The difference is they never accept limitations as permanent. When they hit a skill cap or a plateau, they analyze what was holding them back, and then they find ways to either improve or get around the problem. When they failed in tournaments, they studied their mistakes and developed systems to prevent those mistakes from happening again. When they felt overwhelmed by the competition, they broke down what the best players were doing and learned a way to replicate it. Most players give up the moment the improvement becomes too difficult. They hit their first real plateau and decide they've reached their natural limit. They lose a few tournaments and don't qualify for a few times, and then convince themselves that they don't have what it takes. But pros understand that the obstacles in the way aren't just stop signs, they are indicators telling you where you need to improve your game. Stop getting distracted. This is actually a really harsh truth about most players, especially in this generation. Look at your typical practice session. Honestly, how much time do you actually spend focused on improvement? How often do you check your phone as you go on TikTok? How many days do you wake up with great intentions and then throughout the day just lose motivation? Real pros protect their focus like their career depends on it, and that's because it does. They understand that distracted practice isn't just ineffective, it's also actively harmful. When you practice without full intention, you're reinforcing sloppy habits once again, and also wasting the time you could have spent making some actually real progress. The solution isn't just putting your phone away during practice, it's developing the discipline to maintain consistent focus over weeks and months, not just individual sessions. It's creating systems that make focused practice easier and distracted practice harder. It's understanding that motivation comes and goes, but systems and habits and discipline needs to stay. Most players will cycle between intense focus and complete neglect. They'll grind extremely hard for a couple of days and then gradually lose their interest and stop practicing as hard as they was before, or just completely stop practicing at all. This on and off approach is worse than not practicing at all because it creates an illusion of effort without any results. So you're going to feel like you're practicing really hard, but you're actually not really practicing hard at all. Consistency beats intensity every single time. Player that practices with moderate intensity but practices every single day will always surpass someone who occasionally practices really hard. This is because the brain needs regular, repeated exposure, build the neural pathways that create lasting skill improvement. don't have an ego. Here's the ego check that separates players that will actually improve against players that will just get stuck. A lot of people these days can't handle honest self-assessment because it hurts their self-image and they're just big crybabies. They make excuses for their mistakes, blame external factors for the failures, and resist feedback that challenges their current understanding. Pros have learned to separate their ego from their performance. They can watch their own gameplay and identify mistakes without feeling personally attacked. They can receive criticism from coaches, teammates, or other sources without getting defensive or crying about it. And they can also acknowledge their weaknesses without damaging their own confidence. This isn't about being harsh on yourself or destroying your self-esteem. It's about developing the ability to see performance objectively, like you're analyzing someone else's gameplay. When you can separate your identity and ego, you become capable of honest assessment that drives real improvement. The players who improve the fastest are often the ones that are most critical of their own gameplay. They assume every death was preventable, every missed opportunity was a learning experience, and every plateau means they just need to examine their gameplay more carefully and take a different approach to improvement next time. This isn't negativity, it's just what you need to do to be able to improve fast. But most players will do the complete opposite. They focus on what they're doing well and they completely dismiss what their mistakes are as just some unlucky mistake or an external reason for the mistake. They want to feel good about their current skill level and can't sit there and criticize themselves, and this is a massive reason a lot of people do not go pro ever. Players also get way too attached to certain play styles and techniques because they've invested time into learning them. But pros are willing to completely rebuild their entire play style if it means better results, and you need to be willing to do this too. Don't get complacent. This is very similar to the last point, but it's also where most players are unknowingly sabotaging their own progress. They reach a certain skill level that feels impressive compared to where they started and against whoever else they know in their friend group, and they unconsciously begin to start protecting that level instead of pushing beyond it. They start avoiding challenges that might expose weaknesses, and they stop seeking out situations that will force their growth. And complacency is hard to see because sometimes it feels like confidence. You start winning more fights, placing better in tournaments, and receiving recognition from other players. Your brain interprets this as a success and begins prioritizing maintaining your current skill level other than reaching a better one. The best players in the world are constantly pushing themselves into uncomfortable situations. They seek out opponents who are better than them. They're willing to temporarily perform worse so in the future they can improve. This requires a fundamental shift in how you define success. Instead of identifying yourself with eliminations or deaths, you start identifying your improvement and how your overall statistics are increasing. Instead of avoiding difficult to fight opponents, you constantly need to seek them out because they will give you the most value for your time. You want to be in the comfort zone so bad because you know you will play well. You know what to expect from your practice sessions, and you know that you can maintain your current reputation. But predictable results also means predictable limitations, and predictable limitations means you'll never surprise yourself with a breakthrough performance. Pros understand that growth requires controlled failure. They put themselves in situations where they might lose, might look foolish, and might have to admit they don't know something, but they're comfortable with being uncomfortable because they know that's where improvement lies. And for the final point, take care of your health. Here's a reality that a lot of players actually refuse to accept, and that is that your physical health directly actually will impact your gaming performance. Poor sleep is probably the biggest one I'm talking about, and this just affects everything in your entire life and also how well you perform. But this isn't just me that says this. Pros like Asian Jeff also says this as well. It does very, very badly impact your performance. It's also bad nutrition. Not having the right nutrition can make you have bad focus and also make you have horrible decision making. And also having a form of exercise that you do every day or every other day is very important too, just for staying fit and healthy and just keeping not only your body in good shape, but also making sure your brain is ready to play tournaments. Professional athletes understand that their body is their primary tool and they need to invest a bit of time accordingly into keeping themselves healthy. But esports pros are also finally starting to understand that this isn't just for actual sport, it's also for esport. And this is because your brain is part of your body, and your brain is what processes information, makes decisions, and controls your hands during gameplay. Sleep isn't just about feeling rested, it's about cognitive performance. When you're sleep deprived, your reaction time slows, your decision making becomes impaired, and your ability to learn and retain new information decreases massively. And just quickly, I know it's been a long video, I just want to say we now have a playlist called the Full Fortnite Improvement Course, and it's just all my videos and the most important videos that you can need to improve at Fortnite, and they're all on there, so go check that out. And yeah, I'll just see you in the next one.